Hi, Karen Flaherty here from Living by Human Design, and we've got today's Human Design Weather Report. Today we're dealing with the Gate 18, which is all about correction and judgment and making things better generally, but it can be a kind of quirky kind of energy. So let's go. So here we've got the sun in gate 18. It started late on September 26th on Sunday, and it goes until October 2nd. And then we'll move into the gate 48, I think. The Earth is in the gate 17, which is typically called the gate of opinions in human design, traditional human design. And so we start the week again with the 3420 still in. As I said, it'll be until January. So again, be careful if you're not generally a sacral being with using your newly felt sacral energy. And then just to take a look at where these gates actually are, we've got the gate 18 down here coming off the spleen, which is the gate of correction and judgment and editing and improving, all in a way, as different ways to get to the 58, which is the other half of the channel, which is the gate of the love, the joy of life. And so everything we do to correct things is to help us get closer to the joy of life, or to help others get closer to the joy of life. And then the 17 is up here coming off the bottom of the Ajna, and this is the gate of opinions. It's also about finding possibilities for making things better. So these two work very nicely with each other, but they're in very different parts of the chart. And so this one's all about head energy, or ajna energy, brain energy, if you will, or kind of thinking things through, thinking how you're going to make things better. And then the 18 is off the spleen, which is all about the fears or survival or keeping us safe and healthy. And so that's a very different kind of energy, but it's all about making things better. And we'll talk about that more. The funny thing is that today, September 27th, we started Mercury retrograde, and that will continue for 3 weeks until I think it's October 18th. Meanwhile, we've also got all these other retrograde, we've also got this other retrograde motion going with the 5 outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Add to that today Mercury, and we've also got the nodes in retrograde motion. So that's a lot of redoing, reprocessing, re-envisioning, everything, like add a re to the front of everything that you're doing. And that's what we've got going on. So as I said, this gate 18 is all about correction. In the original I Ching, they actually called it working on what has been spoiled, or otherwise known as correction, right? So it's about making things better. It's about making things better for yourself, but also for everyone else. And it's actually tied to fixing things, basically, in our social construct. In human design, they say the vigilance and determination to uphold and defend basic and fundamental human rights. So it's really not so much about fixing internally. It's not about fixing ourselves at all. It's about fixing things externally. And so whether you're editing a book or changing a light bulb, or fixing something in the community that you're in, or taking on a project that would help the community that you're in, whether it's homelessness or the environment or social justice or anything like that. These are the kinds of energies. So the gate 18 is also considered to be the gate or the channel of judgment. And this can show up as the fear that is usually associated with this gate, which has to do with the disdain or fear of authority, or disdain for authority. And this can show up in a number of different ways. It could be authority at school, or with your parents, or with other people you work with, perhaps, or other authority figures in government, perhaps. The judgment here is such that we all have judgments. I mean, people say we should be non-judgmental. It's really hard to be non-judgmental at all, but it is easier to not make those judgments part of our identity, right? Not to take those on as part of our personal identity, so that they're being used in a, more of a negative way. You're always going to have judgments. Nothing. We're human, right? Nothing ever seems quite right. And you will, whether you've got this in your chart or not, it's part of the logical circuit, but it's part of making things better for ourselves and others. And so you're always going to be wanting to make things better for your family, for your friends, for your spouse, for your children. I mean, anything that shows up is part of this energy. It's part of this archetype. This is really a story within this archetype that's all about changing things, making things better, and having to judge them in a way to make them better, right? I mean, if you go around saying everything's perfect, then there's nothing to fix. But if you're going around thinking that, oh, maybe we should do this, or maybe we should do that, it's always making things better with the anticipation that there will be joy at the end of the rainbow, right? That there'll be joy at some point when you do make things better. When in the incarnation crosses this week, it's actually the cross of service, because it is so much to do with human rights and human frailties and human changes that need to be made. The juxtaposition cross is called correction, and then the final cross is called upheaval. So when people are actually, making these changes, it can seem like upheaval. And there were quite a few personalities born in this cross of upheaval that I found this week. In the Gene Keys, it's called Judgment. In the Shadow, Integrity in the Gift, and Perfection is the CD. So working with this is the Gate 17, which is the Gate of Opinions in the Earth this week. And so it's called Following or Opinions. In quantum human design, it's called Anticipation, which is a little more positive spin on opinions. Opinions can get a kind of a negative rap sometimes, but it's the ancient law that those who wish to rule must know how to serve. And so from this, what I get is that we are all going to have opinions, but the more we understand how to serve and how to use those opinions to everybody's advantage, the more we'll be able to lead and help other people. In the Gene Keys, opinion is the shadow, farsightedness is the gift, and omniscience is the CD. So as I said, we've got judgment, integrity, and perfection. And so what Richard Rudd does in this graphic is we humans are the next technology to be developed. I always like the way he says things, but we're being developed in a way that allows us to get better and better and better, right? He even says that technology is going to help us get there. That the more we develop the technology, the better we'll feel, the better our health will be, the more abundance everyone will have, and the more we'll all feel as if we're living in, a perfect world. That may or may not come to pass during our lifetimes, but that's the goal, right? That's what we're trying to achieve. That's what we're trying to get to. So what one thing he does say is that the more you complain, the more you damage yourself and the world. And the reason he's saying this is because we can, get into a negative feeling, a negative mindset, feeling that everything needs to be corrected, and there's just way too much to be corrected. And so how could we possibly handle it all? But the more we complain, ironically, we're actually putting out those negative thoughts, right? The positive thoughts are what bring or attract other positive things into us. And so the more we're thinking the damaging thoughts, the less we're thinking the positive thoughts, right? So his suggestion is to think more of the positive thoughts, as would mine be. He also says the 18th gene key thus determines whether a child enters adulthood as an integrated adult or as a wounded child posing as an adult. And this was an interesting context that he put it in, because basically the child psychology and child development will tell you that the first 7 years are all about creating physical boundaries, right, between ourselves and the mother and parents and other siblings, creating physical boundaries, figuring out the different parts of the body, right? And then from 7 to 14, they're figuring out the emotional parts pieces, how to be in the world, how to have friends, how to be with other people once you leave the nest, basically. And then from 14 to 21, you're figuring out the mental parts of it, right? And so this 18th gene key is all about the mental parts, and it's about basically becoming the adult by figuring out the mental constructs of society. And the judgment part with the 18th gene key comes in, where the child is trying to assert their boundaries, mental boundaries, from their parents. And if the parents are not open to that, if they're closed down, judgmental, or taking it personally, then the child never actually is able to spread their wings and fly, right? And so this is what he means by saying that if the child is not allowed to do that in a very in a way that allows their independence, they may wind up being a wounded child posing as an adult. So it was a pretty profound way of looking at it, but that's what this archetype is all about. It's about making the changes, creating the boundaries, making the corrections, making the edits and improvements that are needed to be made to the child so that they can reach adulthood and move into that adulthood as a really integrated adult who understands the boundaries around physical, mental, and emotional boundaries that will allow them to be a full adult. And many of us probably didn't have that. So it's an interesting thing to look into. So there are a number of different, so we had a number of different personalities born during this period. In the Sun Gate 18, this would again be the crosses of service, correction, and upheaval. So we had everybody from presidents like Jimmy Carter to actresses and singers, Gwyneth Paltrow and Sting, Johnny Mathis, Mahatma Gandhi, one of the prime ministers of India, Sam Adams, the original Samuel Adams, who was correcting things by being a revolutionary during the American Revolution. Ed Sullivan, Miguel de Cervantes, who wrote Don Quixote, obviously in search of something better, right? Looking for his windmills. Brian Gumbel and Bancroft and Elie Wiesel, who was an infamous Holocaust survivor and author of a number of books. So this week in history, we had a number of things having to do with baseball. Since we're at the end of the baseball season, just thought I'd put these in. This was the time when the Chicago White Sox were found to be fixing the World Series in 1919. The Kennedy assassination report was issued, and this was interesting. In 1996, the Taliban captured Kabul in Afghanistan, and here we are, 25 years later, having the same exact thing happen. So that was pretty interesting timing. The penicillin was discovered in a laboratory, but not really isolated until the 1940s, but obviously a very significant discovery in biology. Yitzhak Rabin and the PLO leader Yasser Arafat signed an interim agreement about the Gaza Strip on September 28th. In 1932, a 5-day work week was established for General Motors workers, and this was a first. Until then, people worked 6 and sometimes 7 days a week, and it was basically because of somebody who had a will center and said, this is ridiculous, we can't work this many days. And so things began to change. It was also the day, unfortunately, when the Dow Jones took a big dip because Lehman Brothers and some other companies went bankrupt as a result of the real estate crisis and what the rest of the world calls the global financial crisis. And in 1972, Roberto Clemente hit his 3,000th and final hit of his career and then retired. And then 1908, the the Model T came out, the first compact in 1982, the first compact disc player came out, and in 1971, Walt Disney World opened in Orlando, Florida. So lots of things going on. There will be probably people wanting to correct a lot of things this week, change a lot of things. And some things need to be changed and some things don't. So you get to decide which things really do need to be changed, how quickly they need to be changed. Just this morning, somebody asked me to be on a board because so many changes need to be happening. On the other hand, Mercury retrograde had the elevator go out just as I was standing there waiting for it. And so things are going to be happening that might seem strange and absurd and not what you were expecting. So keep some balance now that we're in Libra. Keep some balance in mind. Hold on to your emotions if you can. Wait to speak and just kind of observe what other people are doing, because it's bound to be kind of a raucous week. Just a forewarning. So have a good one. Be well. Stay safe, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much for being here. Take care.